Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, except this time I'm reacting to the video that Jubilee rejected me from. My first reaction video since my college decision reactions video. How exciting. Now, I was on Jubilee before, so I thought this would be a great opportunity to be on their channel again. And after what I thought to be 2 successful rounds of interviews, they ghosted me, and I was like, it's close to the production date right now, let me email them. And turns out I wasn't casted, probably because I just did not fit whatever narrative they wanted for their video, because this is what Jubilee tends to do for middle ground. Let's get into it. Let's watch the video that I was rejected from. I've already peeped at the comments and people are like coming at the Cornell girls, so let's see what this is all about. Yay. Am I like a streamer now?
An Ivy League education is worth the tuition.
Okay, before anyone goes up, I'm like yes and no on this for like various reasons. It would be hard to like go up during something like this. Like obviously none of the dropouts are gonna like go.
Ivy League education is worth the tuition if you put in the work and you take advantage of the opportunities at the school. It's worth the tuition if you use everything at your disposal at the school. If you go to the school but don't take advantage of what you're given, then obviously not, but you're given so much that I think it is worth it. In my opinion, if you're able to make it work, if you're able to afford it, I definitely think you should take advantage of that as opposed to another school. I do think it's worth the tuition. Obviously, if you really can't afford it, that's a different story, but I do think you should take advantage of trying to pay that tuition to go to that school.
Okay, I would say it's worth it in the sense that like the Columbia guy said, like if you like take like absolute like advantage of every single thing possible and every single thing just like happens to fall into your favor with like recruiting and like networking and whatnot. But like it's just not the case with a lot of people, even if they do try like really hard. So yeah, let's see what the dropouts have to say.
I'm from Hong Kong, so I have an international perspective. A lot of my friends went to many different international universities that's like much cheaper. For example, I have friends in Oxford, Cambridge. Tuition is like much cheaper. Some of my friends went to German university or Norwegian university. You don't have to
it's
pay
like
for
free in
that.
Europe.
So like honestly, there's a lot of world-class university in like the world. So like you don't have to pay that much for an Ivy League, I think.
Well, also, like for me, it wasn't an option for me to go to Europe and study abroad in Europe. Like from New York, all my family's in New York. It wasn't really feasible for me to go study in Europe, but I do understand what you're saying, that Oxford is definitely a world.
Okay, why do they have 4 dropouts and 3 current students? Side-eye.
World-renowned institution.
Like,
Probably
it's
very
imbalanced.
similar, opportunities.
Like you guys said earlier, I think the network is very valuable. I don't think you need to spend 4 years and pay full tuition to get that network.
Okay, I know him. He was like in HAPA with me, and then like he fell off the face of the earth, and everyone in HAPA was like, where did Nico go? Like, is he ever coming back? So I guess it's confirmed that he
friends
dropped
who
out.
dropped out after 1 semester and still keep in contact with people from school. They'll always have Harvard on their resume. I left Harvard to pursue an opportunity at a startup. That's just not something I really had the resources to do while in school. It's also not a path you necessarily need a degree for.
If you think about Ivy League education in particular, if you compare it to other schools, and you just look at the raw numbers of what graduates from other top state schools are doing, which are charging significantly lower, then the thing you'll find is that they're still getting high-paid jobs, they're still doing amazing things with their career,
Facts.
and they're not paying as much as Ivy League students are. Why are other countries able to offer great education at much lower prices with students getting really good outcomes? So what is it really that we are paying for?
Yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to push back against kind of the first part of what you said about like high-paying jobs.
She's pushing
I
back.
don't think high-paying jobs is necessarily like the sole goal that guides a lot of students through an Ivy League career.
It low-key is though. Like you don't have to lie.
But no, I think if the end goal is to get a high-paying job, get a high ROI on your degree, then any school is something that you can do that with. But Ivy Leagues offer, like, you know, like we mentioned, like the social capital, but also like world-class professors who can not only give you their conventional wisdom for like the classes that you need to hit baseline, but also the wisdom that they've accumulated from over the years. And when your goal is to be a lifelong learner, I think that is invaluable.
Yes, a lot of successful people are from Ivy League schools. But is that because they were smart people who were selected by Ivy League colleges because they were smart and because they went there for the signal? Or is it really something different in their education that did that? Because if you're telling me that it is purely the quality of the faculty that is making you better and more successful in your career, not in terms of money, just in terms of like anything you want to achieve, can you honestly tell me that it is the professors that are making the difference? Or is it the fact that you're already a competent person who, and Ivy League
Yeah.
schools are obviously great at selecting these smart people, and that's why they have a high correlation? Like, is it correlation or is it causation?
I see what you're saying, but I think both of those things can ring true at the same time. And if anything, having the signaler of an Ivy League facilitates that process. Say you're a driven person and an Ivy League opens so many doors for you. I come from, you know, a smaller town. I'm from Las Vegas originally. A lot of folks
Las Vegas is not a small town. I'm from a small town. It's called Statesboro. You can search it
from
up.
my school, you know, we only had, I think, I can name maybe like 4, 5-ish people in my entire graduating class around the valley that got into Ivy Leagues. It's really common to stay in state and to stay at home, you know, and nothing wrong with that, of course. But when you want
mine
to
had
venture
one,
out and
and that
get
was
as much
me.
advantage as you can, an Ivy League opens that door.
Okay, I'm taking my headphones off because the screen recording did not capture the audio at all. Okay, this is, oh my god, I'm such an amateur at this.
I know that you guys mentioned there's a lot of like world-renowned professors in Ivy League, and I totally agree. Like one of my my favorite professors was like a Pulitzer Prize winning professor, and like who did like creative writing, amazing professor and person overall. That being said, a lot of people who go to Ivy Leagues who do like this really world-renowned research are not like the best teachers, and that is something I also have noticed. And so I'm gonna like kind of qualify my answer. So
Like, just because you're like the best in your field does not make you like the most qualified to like be a teacher at something or be like an amazing teacher. Like, granted, there are really, really good like professors here, but like I've been underwhelmed by a lot of them, and a lot of them, like, they're just not meant for teaching, even though they're, you know, incredible in what they do. So anyways, let's see what the Yale guy has to say.
I graduated from Yale with a double degree in computer science and East Asian studies. And so I think in terms of like the computer science and like a more like, I'm curious what economics is like if you guys major in that, but those tend to be like bigger like lecture classes in particular. And honestly, I think that getting a degree at like, you know, an Ivy League for like computer science versus like a local state school is not really that much of a difference. Now, where I do see a big difference is in like the humanities classes, because one thing I noticed at Yale were the classes in the humanities were so tiny. They were like 4 to 5 to 6 people.
I'm scared of them.
And then you really get the effect of like the professor, like your peers in particular. That's when I really started to like feel my worldview opening and having these really intellectual discussions.
Ivy League students are more successful than Ivy League dropouts.
This I can't say is just like straight up like true. Like, obviously people drop out of the Ivy League for a reason. Oh, interesting, a dropout stepped forward.
I think we hear a lot about extremes on both ends when it comes to dropout stories. So you hear like the losers, or they have like the Bill Gates, like Mark Zuckerberg stories. And I feel like on the other end with Ivy League graduates, I would say on average, I think people probably are generally more successful, but it is hard for me to gauge. I was unsure whether.
Yeah, it's like, how do you measure that?
There isn't a wide range of stories when it comes to Ivy League dropouts.
I think, like what he says, correlation or causation. Like the people that are Ivy League students are generally like more driven, hardworking, with a lot of money backing them. So obviously they're gonna have easier time getting success. But I don't think it's because of the Ivy League that causes it. It's because inherently they already have those qualities.
Like, you're at the Ivy League for a reason. Like, you know, like going to an Ivy League is not gonna like make you like become like a more hardworking person. Like, you got here in the first place for a reason.
Saw all my peers going to like management consulting, in particular like BCG and like I didn't even know management consulting existed until I came to college. I was like, what does this like acronym mean?
Yeah.
I realized that my definition of success is not going down that path, or not going down like the really like, you know, I had a lot of computer science, I was in the computer science department. A lot of them went to like these big tech companies, Facebook, Apple, Meta, and all those ones. And I felt this huge pressure to get this really high-paying job. That I realized was making me unhappy. And I'd done some of these internships before. It was not for me. And so I realized that like I really love education and teaching kids and writing and so forth. And so for me, like my definition of success did not correlate with that. And I don't think like an Ivy League is really needed in that sense.
That's so funny because this is literally exactly what I'm talking about in my speech of introduction in my public speaking class, and I'm thinking of actually making it like a video for this channel as well, because this guy, like everything he just said is basically exactly what I have been going through like the past year or so. Like so many people from the Ivy Leagues, they feel this pressure to go to MBB, they feel this pressure to like go into investment banking, they feel the need to have this like super prestigious firm on their resumes. Like many others, like I fell down that trap, and I think ultimately there was a silver lining with everything because I knew I would not have been happy doing any of that.
And it's bizarre to me. Why would you not take a bold bet? It's an amazing country. There's amazing resources. There's a decently good social security net, and the unemployment rate is very low. It's like 3 or 4% or something in the US. So at the end of the day, if you don't get anything, you have a bunch of opportunities of jobs you can still get. Why not take a bold bet? Like why not take a risk and do something interesting?
Oh my God, yes.
I am disappointed in the elimination of DEI initiatives.
Man, Jubilee always trying to like stir something up. I mean, yeah, like I feel like you would kind of look bad if you didn't go up there for this prompt, right?
I think just because of the history of these institutions and how they started, like ultimately having something in place to try and like mitigate the like culture of those places and the kinds of people that are accepted. Yeah, you have to really think about the history, the kind of the Ivy people League that continue to be accepted is a good thing.
So when an entire race of people are denied that opportunity, that's a substantial setback.
But it again came back to wealth. So why is just wealth not what we are going after? Like colleges should account for people who have less resources, and they should be smart enough to understand that, okay, if someone has less resources, then they had lesser opportunities, and we should, create less barriers for them to enter a good university because they had less opportunities. So what is the non-wealth aspect of it, which is why we are not going after financial structures, but instead we are going after race.
If you are in
the whole point of holistic admissions is to look at your application and the context of literally everything about you on the application. So I do agree with what the Cornell girl is saying, but like Ishan, I think that's his name, he also like makes a decent point, because it's not like you are admitting someone because they check a certain box on the application, but it's more so looking at that in the context of like other things, like such as like the guy mentions like socioeconomic status as well, right? Like things like that can greatly affect like how you grow up, if that makes sense. I don't know if that made sense at all.
I also want to, I guess as a final thought, acknowledge that this conversation is going to be largely imperfect because we don't have, all of these different identities, especially those who are most affected by DEI policies. Yeah. Black communities, Latino communities, Indigenous
where
communities,
is the representation in this video?
Ivy League students are elitists.
I would step forward. Okay, of course they're not stepping forward. Like, how can you not step forward?
Ivy League students are elitist. That's like too blanket of a statement to make.
True.
Are they
but some
more
are
elitist to some extent than people going to other schools?
Definitely.
Yes, I think that there's a chance of that happening, because obviously, as we've discussed, Ivy League schools are amazing signals, and they are great credentials to have on your resume. There's a fair amount of people who probably pick Ivy League schools over other schools because of the prestige and the the signaling it provides, and not really the kind of education it provides.
And going back to that management consulting example earlier, I didn't know about this until I even went to Yale in particular. And so do you consider that an elitist culture? I mean, I think personally, yes, because again, like there's obviously, MBB, they take, people from many different universities, but there's definitely a majority will come from a place like
so now she's going to walk forward.
Ivy Leagues and so forth. And so for me, that was a big culture shock, because I didn't know this kind of whole subculture existed. And so I think that in that sense, I would agree.
Okay, we're back. It's like literally 6 days later, but my camera died that night and I had a 9 a.m. class the next morning. So here we are. Let's finish this video.
So, you know, when you're in a group, a large university of people who generally are in this direction, it's really hard to not like fall into like the prestige chasing, or I have to do X, Y, and Z, or not feeling like you're less than because maybe the company you're going for is lower or not one of the big four or whatever it might be.
And like if you're genuinely passionate about making decks and being like consulting for some reason, then yeah, like absolutely go for it. But if you're there because it's like very selective and it's cool to be there, then I think that's wrong.
You don't think it's
That's most people though.
I was just saying that it is not right to choose a company to work for because you think it is so selective and you get to be part of this really highly selected group for
Like
some reason.
exclusivity. As
Yeah, like you should choose an Ivy League. For example, you should choose a Cornell because they have a really good computer science program, not because it's Cornell, so you have the Cornell name with you.
Do you think most people apply to Ivies because they do recognize there is some brand recognition?
I was just gonna say that. A lot of people apply because of the name.
I wonder if elitism just connotes like you care about the brand in some sense, because if you don't care about the brand, you can't really be elitist.
Harvard used to just be men, like white men for the most part. But now that we're getting more diverse people in like ethnicity, income, like all these different things, gender, I think they're not elitist now. And I think now that you can sort of
Not
learn
necessarily.
anything on the internet, I think they're losing a little bit of that brand name as well.
I think once you actually step on campus, at least for me, that vibe like completely goes away. I think everyone is very like driven, but also I feel like very humble. Like I never had really experiences where people were trying to put each other down. And I think the only time I felt like elite was when I was away from college, coming home, or like when someone asks, where do you go to school? And they're like, oh wow. But I feel like
I agree with that.
yeah, I feel like actually
This is fair, but also at the same time, it, like I mentioned before, like it really depends, like based on what school you go to. Like Brown, like I don't know, I think Brown is just like a more chill vibe in general, but like going to like one of the bigger Ivies, like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, like there's definitely gonna be that dynamic, like at least a little bit, and I think it's always gonna kind of be there just because of the name and certain people who do go to the school. Like Ivy League students are elitist, like obviously not everyone, but some are, and I do think that some always will be, especially at the bigger ones.
a college degree isn't relevant anymore.
I hate these statements. Like they're so like generalized. Like what? I literally hate these prompts.
I didn't like the corporate world at all. I think I was kind of sick of just like the bullshit, because college applications was a lot of like bullshit when it came to essays and stuff. And then I felt like once I got to college, I thought that would end, but it just kind of kept going with like job applications, internships, everything in the college world, like leadership positions in clubs and stuff. And I'm like, I'm kind of done with this. I didn't want to do it anymore. I'm like, who am I doing this for? And it wasn't me. And that's ultimately why I dropped out. I think I didn't necessarily know what I was getting into.
Can we have
Certainly, like it might not be relevant for some people like him who like want to pursue other things, but you can't just say it's like not relevant at all, because obviously, you know, people do go on to do successful things. But like you mentioned, it is not like not everyone can, you know, easily just like find something right after. But at the same time, it's like you can't say it's like not relevant at all.
You can learn so much online or just through ways that are not university. You can develop extensive
Also, like, not to be rude or anything, but I'm just very underwhelmed so far in this whole video. I'm like, I don't think anyone has like said anything crazy. Like I've not really been like entertained throughout this video. I'm like, and also these prompts are just horrible.
skill sets, but for a majority of jobs, good paying jobs that someone might want, a requirement is a 4-year bachelor degree. And in fact, I think now that it's going beyond that to having a master's degree or a degree, not even a bachelor's degree.
I think the things that colleges are great at doing is twofold. One is that it provides good verification for skills where you really need some kind of education. Like would I want my doctor or my lawyer to be a dropout? I don't think so. Like, you know, like I would want them to have
Yeah,
gotten
like,
their
duh.
education. Because to be frank, you can't learn surgery online.
Right.
At least not yet. Not yet. Not yet. The reason smart people from around the world.
Yeah, like people have like debated Charlie Kirk on this issue on Jubilee as well. It's just like it's so stupid. Like obviously for certain occupations you can't say that a college degree is entirely like irrelevant. Like use common sense.
Are moving to the US is because they are attracted to like good colleges and they move because of these colleges. So just because everyone wants a 4-year degree is not a valid reason to say that like it's relevant. Like
Yes.
like is it the practical decision to?
Yes.
Yes. But at the same time I feel like the where I see the trends going, I believe that less and less employers will start having a 4-year bachelor degree as a requirement.
I think the reason why the 4-year bachelor degree as a requirement is like important is because it actually shows employer that you are committed to something.
Yeah.
That you're committed enough to do 4 years. Like
I don't think it's about necessarily also learning everything that you learn. It's about what you guys said, putting in the 4 years. I had a professor, a Calc 3 professor, and he goes, in 10 years, you guys probably are not going to remember Calc 3, but you'll take away studying skills, doing homework, preparing on time.
I think it's still very much so the norm in like recruiters' minds, where it's like, you know, you're scanning resumes, applicants, the first thing you're looking for, like, okay, like boom, college, fine, next one. And if they don't kind of have like the base, like 3 things that you're looking for, a college degree being one of them, then it's like, all right, next applicant. And until that norm shifts away from this kind of like model that we've taken on for such a long time, which I don't anticipate will be anytime soon, so long as that remains true, I think a college degree is necessary and relevant.
For me, because
For
of,
some
like,
people.
the bubble I kind of exist in, I've always felt like a college degree isn't necessary, just because most of my friends and people I work with don't go to college, and when
Like it literally just depends on who you are. Like I don't know why it's a debate. It's like it's a fact. Like you may need a college degree depending on a certain profession that you want to go into, or you may not at all. Like this dropout who clearly did not need a degree because he's pursuing something else, and that is okay. That's good. It's like I don't know why it's a debate. Like I don't know. It's just weird.
you guys all brought up great points where I realized, okay, there's also like every other job. I think the prompt was like a pretty blanket statement, but I definitely think it's probably necessary for like a majority of jobs that people are trying to get.
The admission process is fair and equitable.
No, it's not. Like you don't have to lie. It's obviously
so
not.
I think when I hear about this prompt, I'm comparing it to other. I'm thinking about it in terms of other international systems of education, in the sense that like I think about like the testing, right, where it's just solely a test. And I think that is a really reductive way to capture someone's personality in particular. And so the way I think of this is not it's completely fair or completely equitable, but I think it's definitely more fair than that system in particular. And one thing I know the admissions office does here is that they actually look at the background from which you come from, unlike a test score, right? So if you come from a less disadvantaged background, or you come from like a less represented part of a state like upstate New York, then you get, they kind of take that into account, or you come from a very difficult background with a lot of adversity, which is measured in the essays. I think that in particular gives a much more fair representation than like a test score.
I agree with that. Like from an international lens, I didn't do AP, I didn't do IB, I didn't do any world-renowned like testing. Like I got in without testing. So it's like
Okay, like you can obviously use yourself as an example and try to use that as evidence as to why the admissions process is fair. Like, okay, me too. I'm also from a rural area. I also did not go to Phillips Andover, Phillips Exeter, any of those boarding prep schools, and I got in. Is that an indicator of like how fair the admissions process is? I don't think so. Not necessarily. My sister didn't get in, and so many other people from my area in southeast Georgia, like I was like one of like very few who actually got in my year. So I'm just like, I don't know if you can just like use yourself as an example. I don't know, it's just like weird because like you can't ignore the fact that there's so many like qualified applicants, like people with higher test scores than me, people who have objectively more outstanding extracurricular activities than me who have not gone in, and that's just because of the way it is, how selective it is. Acceptance rate is what, 3% right now for Harvard? There's always going to be people who are qualified to get in who won't actually get in, and you don't have to like pretend like that's not the case, because that is the case, and that's just how Ivy League admissions are.
I think it's so much fairer than the system in Hong Kong. Like in Hong Kong, everything is test, everything is score.
Okay, that's
So,
fair.
Like, you don't see that person as a whole. You don't.
Okay, like fair, like holistic admissions, like in itself, like it is like a measure of like fairness in a way, but it's like the whole entire admissions process itself, you cannot say that it is just like fair and equitable, like as a whole. I don't know, like it's gonna ensure like every single like qualified person gets in, because that's not it.
MIT literally has a website called What We Look For, and they literally write down the 5 traits, and they correlate exactly with the essays. For example, one of them is like the ability to prioritize balance. That is right on the website. It's completely free for anyone to see. Another example, Yale cares about intellectual curiosity. That is right on the website, and then you can just look at it right there. And so I think one of the things that we care a lot about is trying to equalize that.
You couldn't be intellectually curious and still not get in. Like, hello? Like,
An unfair aspect about it that some people could agree with me on is early decision, that people can apply early, have a much higher chance in getting in because they agree to go and probably pay full price, whereas people who are less fortunate can't necessarily apply early decision and for sure go, which I think is an aspect that can make
it's a huge commitment to apply ED.
Unfair.
I think people want you to spend money to get even more information.
Right.
I think they put free information out there to attract you, but
Yeah, like obviously if you're more wealthy, you can afford college admission counselors, which a lot of people cannot. So it's always going to be unfair.
there's still this like monetary barrier to getting extra information.
It takes more courage to quit than to finish.
I would say so, yeah.
I think that if you're dropping out of an Ivy League school, there's a special reason why you dropped out of the Ivy League school, because they offer so many opportunities to help you succeed academically, that it is, once you're in the school, I think that it is very feasible to stay in the school and graduate, and that everyone who drops out or transfers, they're doing that for a reason that couldn't be solved by staying at the school.
I don't know if people know this, but like at Harvard, you can always go back. So though I technically like dropped out, I still feel like I haven't let like returning to school as an option go.
Yeah.
It's been like hard for me to talk about just because I just feel very lost. Like, am I doing the right thing? Should I go back to school?
I think the best thing you can do is take a step back and like ask yourself, who am I doing this for? I think for me at Brown, like it was a really nice experience, like, but it felt like I was wearing someone else's shoes almost. And that's kind of what made me realize, like, okay, I need to follow my, like, the thing that excites me, the thing that makes me get out of bed every day, because I think having that kind of passion for something is the most valuable thing in the world, and you don't want to let it die.
Okay. Okay. That's the end of it. How do we wrap this up? I don't know how I feel about that. Let's look at the prompts again, okay? So in this video, this is what they talked about. They talked about an Ivy League education is worth the tuition. Ivy League students are more successful than Ivy League dropouts. I am disappointed in the elimination of DEI initiatives. Ivy League students are elitist. A college degree isn't relevant anymore. The admissions process is fair and equitable, and it takes more courage to quit than to finish. These statements are just like kind of weird to me. Like, I don't know, like they're just very, very like blanket statements, and I would have liked to see like something a little more interesting than this. I don't know, there's not that much nuance to this video. I don't know, I'm starting to question like Jubilee's like motives when it comes to like middle ground episodes nowadays, because in my second interview with like the casting director, I believe, he was like, just throw everything at me, tell me your most like controversial opinions, like have no filter like at all. And I was like, are we still trying to reach middle ground? Like, I don't know, because like in my interviews with Jubilee, I talked a lot about my own struggles as a current like Harvard student who doesn't come from the most conventional background, and I talked about my struggles with like recruiting. Honestly, like I think in my interviews I kind of talked a lot about how like I do have a lot of respect for dropouts, because they clearly had this vision and this thing to like pursue that I didn't have at all, and it wouldn't have made sense for me to drop out, obviously. So like in some ways I am like jealous of someone who has the privilege of dropping out to pursue another venture. So I don't know what they're trying to get at here. I'm kind of confused as to why there were only 3 people on the actual students end and then 4 on the dropouts end. So yeah, I don't know. Apparently I wasn't the right fit for the video. So the Ivy Leagues represented in this video are Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Cornell, Dartmouth, and Brown, which is 6 of them. It's missing Princeton and Penn. So I don't know. It would have been nice to have like one person from each Ivy. Something that they really messed up on, in my opinion, on the Odd One Out episode that I was in, was that there was like almost no representation from a lot of the Ivies. They literally had 3 people from Brown, so clearly, most likely, the mole was going to be from Brown. So that was interesting. Let's see what the comments have to say. I come from a small town in Las Vegas. These Ivy League kids are so out of touch with reality. If you're qualified enough to get into an Ivy League school, you're qualified enough to succeed without it. I don't agree with that. I do not agree with that at all. The Indian dude just clocking everyone's seat has me hollering. The fact that he does it without even trying to. A lot of their stances come from privilege. Going to college purely for the experiencing, the learning, or the networking is a privilege. Cornell girl was so focused on the fact she got into Cornell. They said the same thing about me 3 years ago in the Odd One Out video, and I didn't mention Harvard that many times. To be fair, like, I can see why, like, people are, like, pressed about the Cornell girl, but I wouldn't, like, I don't think she mentioned Cornell, like, that many times. I could be wrong, though. I don't know. The girl saying only 4 or 5 people got into Ivies at her school is crazy, because that's actually a pretty big number compared to normal public schools that aren't feeder schools. Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. True. Elitism doesn't exist because our other elitist friends at school aren't like that. I don't think they understood the question, LMFAO. Yep. Cornell girl using a whole lot of words to say a whole lot of nothing. That's so brutal. She got a lot of hate in this. Okay, don't spread hate to anyone in this video. That concludes the end of the video. So, final thoughts on this? I need to think about this. So I don't want anyone to be like, oh, she's mad for not being casted in the video, but I'm just like, I'm kind of just like, you know? It just makes me question, like, oh, what narrative do the casting producers really want to, like, push in these middle ground videos? I didn't see anything on the Ivy League students end talking about that much, like, adversity, like, kind of in college, you know, like any struggles with recruiting and I don't know, stuff like that, because the vibe that I got from them is like, oh, like, you are kind of fine, you're kind of set as long as you, like, graduate or whatever, which is, like, totally not what I believe at all. But then that makes me wonder, because, like, I don't, like, agree with some of these people, so that would technically make me controversial, right? But clearly not controversial enough for the casting producers, whatever that meant in their eyes. So anyways, that's the video that Jubilee rejected me from. I do want to talk more about, like, stuff like this and, like, deeper things that people outside the Ivy League don't really know that much about. So it's just, like, a lot to, like, unpack. I don't know how to articulate myself right now, but more to come on this. I've been basically doing, like, a college decision reaction, like, part 2, except it's, like, me applying to jobs. And it's been going on for about a year now, and my perspective on Harvard just has changed a lot since freshman year, and the person who I was in that one Jubilee Odd One Out video is, like, very different than who I am today, because that was, like, my first semester at Harvard, and here I am in my last semester at Harvard and kind of ready to get out of here, but also at the same time it is very bittersweet. Anyways, I'm rambling right now, but thank you guys for watching this. It's gonna get, like, no views anyways, but it's just for me to put my thoughts out there and to be like, yay, now you guys know I was rejected from this video. Okay, I'll see y'all in the next video. Okay, bye.